Alright, as I said, we're going to be talking about it. So this is the third part of my three-part Blast series. You can find the first two parts in the description. Part 1 was who is Blast. Part 2 is how powerful is Blast. And in this video, we're going to be talking about why it's very likely that Blast is going to fight Saitama in the future of the story. But also, if I'm going to be talking about that, I have to go into webcomic spoiler stuff, considering, we don't know much about Blast yet in the manga, and in order for me to make sense about it, I have to do it. So if you don't want to know what's going to happen, I suggest you check out now. So I know a lot of you probably see this coming, but there are also a lot other people, probably more so, that don't understand why this is going to happen. Because either they're not privy to the information, or they're just confused as to why they would fight, considering they are both heroes and essentially on the same side. So I'm going to have to reiterate some stuff I've said before, so if you've heard it, I'm sorry, but like I said, there are more people probably that don't know about this stuff rather than who do. So first of all, regardless of if they're going to fight or not, it's more likely than ever we are going to see Blast introduced into the story, at least currently, something that has yet to happen. We've only seen Blast in flashbacks, or we've just simply heard him being talked about. So within the last 9 chapters that have been released of the webcomic, we've had more developments on Blast than we ever have. And that's leading me to think that Blast is very likely to show up soon, because this is like Chekhov's gun here, or should I say Chekhov's Blast. So I originally thought that there was only one real way that Blast was going to be introduced into the current arc of the story, but in light of chapter 115, which we recently got, it seems like there could be another way for this to happen. So we found out that Blast, 15 years ago, had defeated the founder of the Ninja Village, aka the strongest ninja in history, and that his disciples, currently are trying to get revenge for him, and they're going to attempt to publicly execute Blast. So this could mean that they might successfully find Blast somehow, or maybe somehow successfully pull him out into the public, and then that's how we're introduced to Blast currently in the story, not seeing him in flashbacks and stuff. So, and then whatever happens after that could lead to him going against Saitama, or him doing something else. So now let me go over the other huge instance of us finding out and getting development on Blast, which happens just 9 chapters before the whole ninja revelation stuff. In chapter 106, when we get the big reveal of Blast in the flashback of him and saving Tatsumaki and all that stuff. And this was pretty significant because this was establishing that Blast was actually a real person. Because there was a whole bunch of theories before that, possibly that Blast doesn't exist and he's kind of just like a symbol of fear that the Hero Association invented for, to strike fear into monsters and villains and whatnot. And then, of course, there's all the other Saitama being Blast theories and whatnot, which I expand upon in my Who is Blast video if you would like more info on that. But this also leads me to the other possibility of Blast being introduced into the story. And it has to do with the Neo Heroes. So real quick, I'll just go over what they are. Neo Heroes is a rival organization to the Hero Association. They're essentially doing the same thing. They're trying to put the Hero Association out of business, more or less. And that 3 S-Class heroes have already left the Hero Association to join the Neo Heroes in Child Emperor, Metal Bat, and Super Ally Darkshine. And it is implied that there's going to be more heroes leaving to join them. But in the very same chapter that we get the Blast flashback of him with Tatsumaki, we see one of the current Neo Heroes in Excel, who is just like a new character who joined them from being in his own group, the Hunters. He says something very ominous. He says, the Hero Association doesn't have much longer. You should find another job soon, talking to a Hero Association representative. So that right there is possibly implying that there might be some kind of civil war between the 2 hero factions, which makes sense because before this, we've only really seen the heroes take on monsters and stuff like that, and it's kind of getting repetitive if it keeps going in that direction. So a civil war between the 2 hero factions would definitely breathe new life into the story and certainly make things super exciting, at least for most people in my opinion, because, come on, why not? Most of the popular hypothetical matchups in the community usually revolve around like a hero fighting another hero. So us actually seeing it happen in the story is going to be awesome, and I really hope that this is where one has things headed. And like I said, what Excel is saying certainly implies that it is. So we know that Saitama is for sure staying with the Hero Association. He established this when he's talking to Genos, and Genos is like, hey, you should join the Neo Heroes too. It's like, nah, I don't feel like it. So now we know that Saitama's going to stay with them, meaning that if it does come down to this civil war, there's really going to be no opposition on the side of the Neo heroes because Saitama more or less is going to get involved in this. I mean, come on, he has to be. So it's going to come down to him just like taking out everybody with kind of an anticlimactic ending, which brings us to Blast and why he's probably going to either be involved with the Neo heroes, maybe becoming like their number one, or just being involved in this civil war some way. So I don't know if he is for sure going to join them, because we know that he doesn't really care about allegiances and stuff like that. He says himself that being a hero is kind of just a hobby to him, and that he more so wants humanity to kind of defend themselves. I mean, not exactly. What he specifically says to Tatsumaki is, when the time comes, don't go expecting someone to save you. And then, you know, as Sitch said before, he hates being in the limelight. He'll only act on his own free will. But I feel that he has to come into this so that Saitama has someone to face at the end of this arc, like the one big grand battle that he has. Because we saw in the first part of the series, his one big grand battle was against Boros. Like, if Boros wasn't with the initial monster invasion and it was just like the three generals, would have kind of sucked, you know, it would have been really anticlimactic. Same thing with the Hero Association versus the Monster Association arc. Like, it eventually came down to Saitama versus Awakened Garo, but like, if Garo didn't awaken, it would have been like, I guess, Saitama versus Golden S, you know, and that would have been anticlimactic. So that means that Blast is probably going to be facing Saitama at the end of this Civil War arc, one way or another, regardless of where his allegiance lies. Which would make Blast Saitama's third big opponent of this series, and I just think it makes sense to me. So why is Blast going to go after Saitama? Well, it's all speculation at this point, and your guess is as good as mine, but I assume it's going to be a similar dynamic that Batman and Superman initially had. You know how where Batman sees Superman as like this threat to humanity, saying some very interesting things there, which I'm going to get into, of course. But he more or less felt that he was obligated to take out Superman because he was just too powerful and he was too much of a threat to stick around. So maybe something happens and Saitama like causes like a disaster or a catastrophe or something. I'm not saying he's necessarily going to kill people or something like that, but he does just something that draws attention to him in a negative way. Because we saw before, like when he destroyed the meteor, it caused a whole bunch of collateral damage and people kind of crapped on him for that. And while his intentions were good, of course, it just didn't work out the way exactly that he wanted it to. So maybe he does something similar to that. I don't know the exact circumstances, but you know, something along those lines will happen. And then maybe this brings attention to Blast, and Blast is like, whoa, this guy is insane. I need to step up to the plate here because no other S-Class heroes can take care of this guy. I am the one that solely needs to do it. And this goes back to the threat to humanity thing, which is interesting because we remember Sitch quite famously said at the Hero Association board meeting thing, he was like, when humanity is in danger and in need of help, Blast will surely come out and show himself. It says something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But we all assumed, or at least me, and I know some others assumed, that this probably meant that Blast was going to come out when Disaster Level God was announced, because he was like, oh, I have to take care of this. This is out of the hands of the S-Class heroes. They can't do this. But maybe, in a twist of things, it's not exactly Disaster Level God that brings Blast out, but it's Saitama, because he sees him as a threat to humanity, just like how I said that Batman saw Superman. Regardless of how good Saitama's intentions are, it's just like, I have to take care of you. So while we're on Superman, let me just put it out there that I think that Blast might possibly be one's allegory for Superman in this story. Because we've seen throughout the series that he has other allegories for other types of archetypes and characters and villains and whatnot in the series. I mean, like, Vaccine Man, come on, he's the very first one. He looks just like Piccolo. He could fly, he could throw energy blasts. He's just like a Dragon Ball Z villain. Beefcake, he's like a gigantic hulking monster, kind of like Attack on Titan, but there's other instances of it too. We saw Saitama take care of the meteor, that's another trope. Him going against Boros, more or less just represented like the absolute overpowered final boss enemy. I mean, actually, Boros is more or less like originally came from this story that one was working on as a kid. I guess maybe one of his first stories that he ever made, called Taio Man. And that he says that, like, the villain that he invented, which is based on Boros, or Boros is based off of, was just too powerful, and that he couldn't come up with anyone to defeat him until, like, 20 years after the fact. And that kind of ties into Boros taking 20 years to reach Earth by the time that Saitama has fully matured. So that's kind of nice little connection that one is making there. But in the end, Saitama has overcome all of these obstacles, overcome all of these allegories, because, you know, Saitama more or less represents absolute power and that he cannot be defeated even by all these stereotypes. So another really popular one, maybe the most popular one for absolute power, is definitely Superman. He's been around for, what, 70, 80 years? He is an integral part of the zeitgeist, and he's always in discussions of, like, who's the strongest, who can beat this guy, and whatnot. So it makes sense that one would want to include him in this story as well. Also, Blast kind of looks like Superman, you know? He has, like, the cape, he has the dark hair, he has the suit similar to him, and while they don't have the exact symbol, it more or less is kind of lining up here. And while I don't think we've ever seen an official color scheme for Blast, I really wouldn't be surprised if it was red and blue like Superman's is. Also, let us not forget, Blast is S-Class rank number 1 and is hyped up more so than anyone, even more than King. I mean, there's multiple instances in the story where people directly say that he is stronger than King. And if we're relating the Justice League to the S-Class, if there was like rankings there, I mean, Superman would be number 1, you know, if there was rankings in the Justice League, just like how Blast is number 1 in the S-Class. So let's just say all this happens, regardless of the circumstances, Saitama squares off against Blast. Well, how does this fight go down? Well, I don't think Blast is going to defeat Saitama. I really don't think anyone is going to defeat Saitama. It's just ultimately going to come down to who is going to push him the furthest. So at this current point in the story, I do believe that Blast will push Saitama the furthest he's ever been pushed, meaning that he's probably going to be stronger than Boros and Awakened Garo, or at the minimum just give a better performance than they did. And I think there's hype to support this. I mean, if you would like to fully understand how powerful I think Blast is, feel free to check out my How Strong or How Powerful is Blast video. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's very likely this is going to happen. I certainly hope it does, and I can't wait to see it. I just want to see Blast. I just want to see him do something, and I know all of you do too. Blast is so popular, so hyped up by not only the story, but the fandom as well. So I really hope that this happens. So let me know what you think about all of this. If you liked it, please give it a like. And I also have a Patreon, gives you access to a weekly Q&A video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.